Again, good morning. Welcome to the third day of ERTMS 2024. Together with Kier Fitch, we will introduce this day. Yesterday was a most interesting day, full of interesting presentations. Welcome back here, people in Valenciennes, in the Cité des Congrès, and also welcome back to our participants online via the live stream. We will have further 2 sessions this morning. I hope you are well prepared, and I also hope that you enjoyed the networking cocktail yesterday. This morning we will first pick up from yesterday, because the first session will be about lessons learned and moving to best practices. And then we will move on to the future, an outlook to the future, what could possibly be the evolution of ERTMS. We will conclude at lunchtime, and we will have the honor and pleasure to have Magda Kopczynska, the Director General of DG Move in the European Commission, for giving the conclusion. And before, Kier Fitch of DG Move will give an introduction of what we will expect this morning. Kier, the floor is yours.
Great, many thanks, Joseph. I believe I should have a couple of slides, if somebody can put them up. But if not, I will tell you anyway. So, as Joseph has just said, this morning we have 2 very important series of sessions for you. The first on learning the lessons from ERTMS deployment, and the second on the future of ERTMS. So in this first session, you'll be hearing a number of presentations on how to do it well. And in particular, of course, we are looking for a focus on the things that actually help you bring down the costs, speed up and de-risk the deployment of ERTMS. So I think you'll be hearing a lot on keeping it simple by focusing on the core specifications and not building in lots of additional nice-to-have requirements which make the whole process much harder than it need be. For the second session, we will be looking to the future of ERTMS, and here you will be hearing from our colleagues in Europe's Rail joint undertaking on the work that they are doing, but of course doing with all of you on developing the technologies of the future. Now, there is a big question here, one that has certainly been a big feature of some of our discussions with the suppliers, with the IMs during this conference, and that is the question as to what kind of further innovation you want, how quickly we should deploy it, when we should actually really put it in the regulations. But leaving that question aside, there is a lot of work developing future levels of ATO, so taking it up to GOA4, fully automated ATO, looking to the possibilities of using absolute satellite positioning, using train integrity devices linked also with the DAC for freight, to mean that we can actually move beyond the traditional train detection systems and actually to a pure radio-based railway with all the savings that that will bring. Lots of work in what is called the system pillar of the JU to actually align the specifications to allow us to move forward with new innovations much more seamlessly than has been the case in the past, building into the system a greater degree of modularity, which will allow easier upgrading of bits of the system without the costs and complexity that we have at the moment, where we end up having to replace large parts of the system. So many questions there, many challenges, but also we hope things that will add further to the flexibility, the reliability, but also the reduction of costs for the future railway. But that's enough from the 2 of us. I will invite our first panel onto the stage. So Klaus Mindl, the Director General ad interim of UNIFE, will lead you through the panel on best practices, learning the lessons and making ERTMS better and quicker to be deployed for the future. Klaus.
Well, many thanks, Kier. Before we hand over to Klaus, I forgot to mention an important aspect in my introduction. This afternoon we will slide into the celebration of 20 years of ERA. Everyone is, of course, welcome to celebrate with us. The party will start at 2:30. There will be various events. So those of you who have registered are anyhow planning to stay here, but for all others, you are very welcome to join us this afternoon. Thank you very much, and Klaus, over to you.
Oops, sorry, Klaus.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see you. There are so many people around. Still, second day, first session. Yeah, the session is indeed somehow linked to the one we had yesterday, session 3. This time, it's not the focus on projects, so more on subjects which play a critical role in regards of implementation. So it's more about the topics themselves and the context. We have a number of presentations here. Some of them are shared. I think, and we all thought that it's important where needed and where possible to present not just the view of railways, or this is the view of supply industry, but to combine it, to have really a sector perspective regarding those critical topics. So to be more complete, having a more holistic view on the subjects. We will start with this first presentation regarding cost efficiency. As we heard and discussed already on the first day during the workshops, that this is a hot topic. It has always been a hot topic. And there is a joint presentation here from Gabriel Duplessis from SNCF being here for CR, and Roland Stadelbauer from Thales being here for Unife. And they will present an analysis on the cost drivers, how to address them. So please welcome warmly Roland Stadelbauer and Gabriel Duplessis.
We also have some slides. Oh, nice. I guess it is a green button if necessary. Okay. So we have prepared a common presentation with Roland, because the issue is not to reduce only prices and margins of the supplier as a buyer. We have a common lesson learned about cost-efficient approach of deployment of ERTMS. And so we have made the choice to present it through a SWOT matrix. Concerning strengths, I won't, first of all, I won't comment very long what is positive, because what is negative, it is not because I am negative. What is negative is clear for finding improvements. So as a strength, clear vision, the SERA, not an issue. Opportunities, the screen is very small. Benefits of ERTMS, availability, reliability, and sometimes capacity, we all know, not an issue. An opportunity which is often not in mind is the increasing return of investments. That means once you have begun to implement ERTMS, the more kilometer you implement, the less. It is costly, but you spend less money especially because you already have a part of the fleet which is already equipped. About weaknesses, first of all, it is costly, and I spent 8 years of my working life to try to find an economic model, positive economic model, and my conclusion is there is not really, unless in 20, 30 or 40 years further, which no chief financial officer can accept. Secondly, it is very important to find a way that every enhancement of ERTMS can be made in a compatible way. If not, it is a mess for all railway operators, as infra manager, as well for railway undertakings. About the threats, we are asked to accelerate the deployment. We all agree on this objective, but it is clear that this need production capacity increase, which is not so simple to achieve in a quite well-managed way. We will see after. Obviously, we need stability of specification. A lot of colleagues have stated this. I don't insist on it. And because of the economic model, we also need subsidy in order to implement this with a long-term vision. But I will explain more in the conclusion. Please, Roland, about lesson learned.
Thank you, Gabriel. So, hello and welcome, everyone. What we have prepared is some lessons learned, or pointed out some pain points we realized during implementation of ETCS projects and ETCS programs around the world. So if we look first on the track side, the biggest pain points, and this is more or less a summary what you can see here on this slide, what was also discussed on Tuesday intensely in the working groups 4 and 5. So this is more or less the same points were mentioned there. I think the biggest pain point for the infrastructure manager is that the infrastructure is not ETCS ready. So there are plenty of mechanical interlockings, relay interlocking still in operation. Even worse, they can even operate it for 10, 15 years more, and the amortization of these interlockings is not reached yet. A second point is the replication or simulation of existing Class B systems. So we face again and again that ETCS is used to keep the existing operational rules of Class B systems, and ETCS has to be designed in a way to make this possible and keep these operational rules. So that means we are implementing a national ETCS solution modified to keep it, or to keep the operational rules of these countries or infrastructure managers alive. Then, of course, integration to the landscape of the infrastructure managers, so interfaces to TMS systems, diagnosis systems, and. And also a big pain point for us is construction work. So most of the signaling suppliers need then partners, construction work companies, and here also there could be already some pre-work done in advance before ETCS should come into the field. If we look to the onboard side, here again, Class B system was mentioned also during the working groups. It's also a pain point for us. So there are a lot of different Class B systems around Europe, different seal levels, no standardized interfaces, and integration of such Class B systems is quite tricky, also when we think about safety cases and safety point of view. Same as integration to the Class B system for the onboard unit, it's always tricky to integrate to, especially at retrofit programs, to old vehicles with very specific TMS systems, very specific traction systems and braking systems. And the second big group is then the national non-technical requirements and the national homologation process, which differs from country to country and organization to organizations. There's no harmonized homologation process all around Europe, and we have different work to do in different countries. So what can we do better? I think this question cannot be answered that simple, but Gabriel and I, we have picked out a few points where we think we can make ETCS more efficient. If we look to the track side, so first group really lines and corridors to equip fully with ETCS instead of having partly ETCS on this point of the line or on this point of the network. So pick out corridors, equip them fully with ETCS and get rid of the existing Class B systems as well as the operational rules of those Class B systems. Second, there was the interlocking issue mentioned in the beginning. So a lot of lines are not ETCS level 2 ready. So especially on secondary lines or Class B networks, there should be an analysis done if still ETCS level 1 or if ETCS level 2 is suitable or probably an ETCS level 1 solution. So there are several more performant ETCS solutions on the market now than 10 years before, can be feasible. If we look to the onboard side, similar as grouping the lines here, it would make sense to group vehicle types to tender lots, so vehicle types which are quite similar, group them in one lot for tenders and not tender each vehicle fleet or each vehicle type separately. Also make an analysis if it makes worse to always have a full integration of ETCS in the vehicle, especially on vehicle types with small fleets where the first-in-class costs are quite high. So probably an ETCS standalone solution, not integrated fully integrated in the vehicle itself, could make sense. Yeah, and last but not least, or the first point here in this list is avoid to equip, but this is obvious, avoid to equip vehicles which are close to be retired or out of life.
Yes. And the third lesson learned and the third idea we have in mind to improve cost effectiveness of deployment is to achieve high production capacity through long-term contracts with between supplier and buyer. And having this in mind, we need two prerequisites. One has already been discussed yesterday. It is we need a subsidy mechanism in accordance with the objectives, that is, in accordance with the ambitious program, and in accordance with these long-term contracts. And we also need stability of specification, not only as it was explained yesterday because of every change is costly, for sure, but also because if we achieve long-term contracts, we don't need to modify our contracts with payment too frequently. So when I state with an interrogation mark 20 years, it is to have in mind that 20 years is not a bad time frame according to midlife of trains, to expected life of digital equipments. We need to think about this kind of length of stability. I know this could be debate, but it is, from a cost effectiveness point of view, absolutely necessary. And also, if it is not achievable and if it is driven by other objective, we need that it is predictable, cost effective, obviously. We don't want any innovation that are not cost effective, obviously. And we also need that these innovations are compatible. If not, we go back to the past world. We had 20 or 30 signaling equipment all over Europe. We will have similar number of ETCS all over Europe. And we will miss the target, I think. I leave the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please take a seat. Just an advice, just in between, please use Slido to introduce your questions, enter your questions, preparing the Q&A session afterwards. So the next presentation we will have now is from Jorge. I think the name is enough. Everybody knows Jorge. So welcome. He will explain to us how to optimize time and resources when testing ERTMS. He will introduce the ERL organization, how this network of labs is used for testing, and also explain how efficiency of testing could be improved. Jorge, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Klaus. Thanks to the agency for inviting the association I'm representing today to this conference. And I will start with my presentation. Well, my name is Jorge Iglesias. I'm currently the director of the CEDES Rail Interoperability Lab, and I'm here representing EAL, which is the ERTMS Accredited Labs Association, an association created between all the labs in Europe. And I will talk about how. No, the problem is I don't see the. How we can optimize time and resources when testing ERTMS. Well, let me first present the association. We are a set of labs around Europe. We have been joined to have a common position regarding ERTMS. Many of these labs have been very active in the deployment of the ERTMS in several countries. We can solve interoperability issues in the past. And now, when ETCS is much more stable and interoperability issues are less and less, I think the labs should be focused on testing the new functionalities that are going to be implemented soon. The new functionality is already included in the TSI. And also, we'll focus our activity in reduce at maximum the tests on track and in order to speed up the ETCS and translate these tests from the track to the lab. Well, the first lab was CEDES in Madrid, the lab dedicated to ERTMS. The second lab was DLR in Germany, and the third one was Multitel, the lab you will visit this afternoon in Belgium, followed by a lab in Genoa, in Rina in Italy. Also, we have a lab in France, the lab from the SNCF, another lab from Italcertifer in Italy, and the last lab that has joined our association is a lab in Sofia, in Bulgaria. The only prerequisite to be a member is to be accredited for testing ERTMS. This accreditation is the guarantee of the neutrality and independence. And this association has been recognized by the European Commission as a representative body from the railway sector. Let's start with the first with the challenges that yesterday we saw related to ERTMS. Well, the first challenge is the very low speed of ETCS deployment in Europe. We are below the figures we expected, and we have to increase this speed if we want to reach the single European railway area. The second challenge is Class B decommissioning, which is parallel to the previous one. This is vital to speed up the ERTMS deployment, and especially in some countries where the Class B system has a level of safety much lower than ERTMS. And we have a tragic example in my country with the accident on 213. The third point is the cross-border issues. This figure was very famous in the 90s, I think, and it's still valid. This is still valid. We are still having many, many problems to cross the borders and to have the international connections. The fourth is the decrease of rail transport market share. This is an image taken from artificial intelligence, and you can see how the future transport is not very, the railways are not very well represented in this figure. And last but not least is we have to harmonize operational rules and engineering rules, which is vital to achieve this goal. Which are the ways of solutions? The first one is increasing the member states' willingness to change. This is vital. And now all the countries, they have a good opportunity with the national implementation plan they are going to send in June to commit themselves to mainly the commissioning Class B system and pushing up the ETCS. But this has to be pushed by the European Commission and also by the European Railways Agency. The second one is accelerating the harmonization of operational and engineering rules. This should be done mainly by the infra managers and also with the help of the European Railway Agency. And the three ways of solutions I put later on is reduce the risk of new interoperability issues coming from the new technologies we are implementing in the ETCS, reduce the cost, and also reduce the time to place in service. From my point of view, the industry can help a lot in these three items, but also I will present here how the labs, these independent labs, we can help also in this process. How can we help? Well, the first, to reduce the cost, the first issue is now we have to develop, and we are developing in FPCs, in Rail, some low-cost solutions for regional lines. And these low-cost solutions can be tested initially in the labs. It will be a very good possibility. Secondly, the market scale. Well, I think ERTMS is not only a European standard, it's a worldwide standard. Therefore, I think now the market size is big enough to start reducing the cost. The third one is increase the competition, but if we increase the competition, we have the mess we have in our country, in Spain, with all the suppliers for trackside and on board, but we solve this issue. But the problem of increasing competition is that you increase the system complexity, you have many suppliers together, and therefore you have increasing also the cost for the deployment, and you can extend it too long, the process for placing service. And here is where the labs, we can help. First, because we can test the new functionalities, and secondly, because we can move the test from the track to the lab, reducing cost and time, increasing the system reliability, and also advance the last-minute problems that we always have in the signaling world, you know very well. Well, we have capacity in the labs to do this. Some of the labs, we have an experience that more than 20 years testing ETCS. We have the capability to move the test from the track to the lab, which is very important. We are neutral and independent, as I said, and we have also capacity for testing in advance the ESC test. And also we are participating some of the labs in the new functionalities developed in Rail and also included in the TSI, and we can test all these functionalities at lab. And also I think we can be a very good link between the infra managers and the suppliers for performing tests in the lab. We have been testing traditionally subsea 76. We have dedicated more than 20 years for creating and maintaining the subsea 76. We have dedicated a lot of resources, and this subset is the one guaranteeing the full conformity of the onboard unit. We have been involved in test campaigns with all the European companies and non-European companies for certify the onboard unit, but we are not only limited to this subsea 76 and conformity test for testing the ballistic loop, etc. We also have capacity for testing the whole system, integrating both the trackside and the onboard in the lab. And this possibility is one of the key issues to accelerate the deployment of ETCS. We have tested many lines in the labs. You can see in this figure a line in Saudi Arabia. We tested in CEDES lab. We tested the whole line before the system was installed in the real track. And also we have used the lab for testing some reference lines, engineering rules and so on, and transitions. Our opinion about ESC tests is that they should be maintained. They should be rationalized and also reduced and more translated to the lab. Also, the possibility of running remote tests is very important because we don't have to integrate all the equipment in a lab. And okay, we have tested many lines in Europe. I would like to show you three examples of how we test in the labs. Here, there is a video. If you can activate the video, please. I don't know if, okay. It's a line we tested in the lab. It's a line in Senegal, joining the airport and Dakar. It's a line when it was an onboard unit baseline 3 that was integrated in the lab, and it was a level 2 line with a baseline 2 functionality in the line. Therefore, the companies contracted this test before going to Dakar and executing all the tests in the lab and debug the system in the lab before starting testing in Dakar. That also the tests were during the summertime, and you can imagine how hard can be the test on a line in Dakar in summertime. But you can see how we integrate everything. This is the track simulator, and the train is moving here. We have the real onboard integrated in the lab and the real RBC, and they were communicating, and we tested all the routes around this line, and it was a very successful project. The second thing I would like to comment is this analysis of the cost. We analyzed a line where initially the tests were foreseen on track for 2 months. But finally, the duration of the test was 10.5 months. And the cost of the test with the locomotive, all the team testing and so on during almost 11 months was 1.3 million euros. If the tests were performed only in the lab, the cost will be 180 kilo euros, 13%, and the duration, including all the process of integrating onboard unit and RBC and all the track data in the lab, will be 3 months. Finally, the approach we did in several countries is to test everything first in the lab and later on track. And even in this case, the costs were reduced to 60%. And the duration will be 5 months, 3 in the lab and 2 on track. But the main advantage in this case is not only the reduction of the cost, but we can open the line 8.5 months in advance because all the tests running in the lab are executed before finishing the track. And just the third example, it was a line we were testing in a lab, a line, it was in the Gate for Rail project, an European project, and we integrated in the lab a real onboard unit. Here is the DMI of this real onboard unit. It was a line in Sardinia, in Italy. This is the Cagliari station. And we moved this onboard unit over this line equipped with virtual balises. Balises not located on the track, but localized by the satellite. Also, we simulate the satellite signal, and therefore, the train was moving over the track, as you can see here. Now, start responsible, and after reading the first virtual balise, which is located here, the train will transit to full supervision. And that's the way we can test everything. We projected over Google Earth to give a more realistic vision of the process, but you can see how we can test. And this blue line is the real track trajectory, and the red line is the signal and the location given by the satellite, which are very close. And we simulated this trip on a line in Italy from a lab where the onboard unit were integrated in this real line. These are the things we can do in the labs. We can test many, many, many things. And just to finish, well, I think we are very in favor of collaboration of all the entities because the challenge is so big that we have to use all the resources we have. The lab from the suppliers remotely connected is a good option. Also the lab from the infra managers and also the neutral labs. And if there are more labs in Europe, we'll be able to develop faster the ERTMS. Just to conclude, we are a group of independent labs with a great experience. The knowledge can be used to translate the test from the track to the lab. And also we think that the collaboration is needed between all the stakeholders, and the ESG test should be reduced as maximum, but I think they will always exist because we have to check in advance the train track interoperability. This is a must. But if we translate everything to the lab, the things are done very, very fast. And that's all. This is the list of the labs belonging to the lab. Thanks a lot for your attention. This will be my last conference, therefore I will say goodbye to everybody after many years dedicated to ERTMS. And I hope that the dream we had in the past will be a reality in 10 or 20 years, no more. Thank you, Klaus. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jorge. And thanks indeed. Thanks indeed for explaining the spectrum you offer as accredited labs. Not forgetting that there are also suppliers labs which could be integrated and with cooperation. Great for that. Certification is perhaps for some of us some kind of terra incognita. So we have luckily Tizia Luz here from DECRA speaking on behalf of MB Rail. Welcome, Tizia. So Tizia will explore for us the process, stakeholders, phases, modules, and also give some recommendations how the process efficiency can be improved. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Klaus, for the introduction. My name is Tizia Luz, and I'm here on behalf of the notified bodies. And I thank ERA for us to have us here at the conference, that we can give our view about certification. Well, as the title says, well, it's our view of how to come to an efficient and effective way of certification. As it is said before, the days before, well, we all want to have it quicker and better. So, and this is my presentation, is about 3 things. Well, I first give a short introduction about what MB Rail is, then what we have achieved until now, and coming up of how we can proceed in order to have it more efficient and effective. Well, here you see how MB Rail is organized. We have, for the 4 subgroups, we have energy, infrastructure, rolling stock, CCS, and in those 4 subgroups, we handle all the TSIs, like the infrastructure, the PRM, safety in railway tunnels, lock and pass, wagons, and so on. But today I'm here for the CCS, and since beginning of this year, I'm the subgroup leader of that subgroup. And besides, we are having meetings within the CCS with all the NOBOs. We also have 3 times a year a meeting with ERA, and that's also mentioned in the TSI, that we will have a direct contact with ERA about the certification. Well, if you can see here, there are a lot of CCS NOBOs here within Europe. There are 56 registered in NANDO. And some of them are only doing infrastructure, some of them are only doing rolling stock, and well, the most of them do both. And from those 56 NOBOs, well, around 30 are participating very actively in our subgroup CCS. Well, one of the purpose of us as the MB Rail is to avoid unnecessary and technical and economical burden. And we want to be as most effective and play all on the same level for you as applicants to do the certification. And how do we do that? We're having meetings on how to do the approach, and so we're making documents from how we have to work. and those are called RFUs, and that stands for recommendations for use. Well, it's not that it's a recommendation that indicates that you can use it, but well, as a NOBO, we have to use it. But because it's not a legislation, we have mentioned it as RFUs. Well, we also have questions and answers, and we have Q&Cs, and well, that can lead to sometimes a technical opinion of the ERA. Well, we have some examples for make it more efficiently and effective. Is that we have an RFU, and that's valid for all NOBO work. It's about how we have to make our reports so that we all have the same format for it, and that's easy to look at it, what the content is. Well, we also have an example for CCS, and that is how to handle the famous subset 76, which is mentioned by my previous one, by George. Well, that is what we have done so far, but now for the future. It's just, the whole rollout has just started. And well, in all countries, and that means that there is a huge amount of work to be done. And that will be a challenge also for us as notified bodies. Well, why it's a challenge? It's also mentioned before. Well, there is a shortage of employees. We also need people to do the certification. Well, there's another thing. Not all specifications are yet known. Well, yesterday we heard a lot about FRMCS, that it's now with version 2, but well, nevertheless, we need to have that stable. Well, also requirements for ATO are not really fully mature. And for us as a NOBOs, notified bodies, at the moment, we don't even have the application guide for the TSI 2023. So, but well, these are challenges, and how can we handle them? Well, we have some of them. We have visited us at the workshop 7. We have mentioned some of these. Well, we have the process of certification. And well, on the top you see the applicant, the NOBO, and then ERA, NSA. That is how you see it in most plannings. But we would like to see it more in a cooperation between applicant, NOBO, and ERA, NSA. And well, every certification process starts at the applicant. Well, we have, as an applicant, it's, well, essential if we have a contract from an applicant. It's essential that we have a clear definition of what the scope of the assessment will be. And that's a description of all the interfaces of the system, and even if optional functions are incorporated or not. So, and that's irrelevant if it's a newly built vehicle, or that it's a retrofit, or that it's an IC. Well, when you contract a NOBO, it's also for us essential to have contracted the NOBO from the start, and not from at the end and saying, well, this is my system, and please certify it. So, because when we are involved from the start, we can also, well, we are not officially able to give advice, but we can ask several questions to make it more smooth. And, well, a third one is the selection of the modules. We have noticed that not everyone knows precisely what the modules are. I come back to that later. Well, a fourth point, which is well, of importance. Although we like to puzzle as NOBOs, well, we really like to have the information clause by clause very clear given, because, well, puzzling is nice but takes time, and if you give the information clause by clause, where the information is written is the evidence that the requirement is fulfilled. Well, and if you are assessing a subsystem, then of course you use ICs. And well, it happens quite often that we only receive the certificate of the IC, but we definitely need also the accompanying NOBO file, because there the conditions and limits are mentioned, and we need to take them into account into our assessment. Well, to be transparent, if you are transparent, that will reduce cost, because then you have less time to do the work. And well, our approach would be that we are also incorporated during the kickoff of a process, and not only that the applicant is doing a pre-engagement with ERA NSA, but also take the NOBO with it in that process, so that the scope is clear for everyone, as I previously said. Well, and last, that is, when there is a system in operation, then there will be sometimes update, then please inform us, as for the vehicle authorization regulation in Article 15, it's stated how to inform the NOBO. Well, I stated earlier there are many projects going on, and well, how to improve that. And we think you can have different phases for it, and a generic product, a generic application, a specific application. And when you certify all three of them, then it's easier to have it clear, and you can cross-accept it, and you don't have to redo all the things again, because we do like to have things well, done smoothly. Well, then there is the module to choose. Well, I can talk, but I see on the time that I wanted to talk something more. So you have to choose the right modules, and according to your choice, we do the assessment which is going on. Well, I said in my presentation, I only mentioned the applicant, the NOBO, and the ERA NSA, but there's also the infrastructure manager. And that's also a possibility to improve the process. Well, in our point of view, you can reduce the ESC and RSC testing and make more use of cross-acceptance, and not only within one country, but also over the borders, because our experience is now that ESC testings are done in several countries for the same scenario, and that saves money and time. Well, and there's also something for accepting of reports. Well, our experience is that in some countries you're only allowed to deliver reports in the national language, and it helps us to have it also in English, and that's one of the solutions for having a less of capacity, because a lot of people speak English. Well, for us it's important. And then for the NOBO, how can we help you? How can we support you more? It's about, we have the know-how about legislation, and we can help you. And when we have a contact between you as applicant and the ERA, we can give, as a neutral person, the status of the assessment. And then if we can say what is going well and what are the problems during the whole process. So it will not be a surprise when you're going for the final application. Well, then we also have a suggestion for ERA and the NSA, and it's said before, first of all, have a stable legislation. All the people speaking from before have said that also. And, well, I repeat it here again, to make a dossier possible also in English for all countries. Well, and in order to reduce time, to have a common approach and have regular meetings, not only the pre-engagement and not only at the end, but in between of a process of certification, have it all have regular meetings, and that can be informal or whatever you like it, but well, everyone is informed and they know what is going on, and we can go on to that. Well, and then I'm coming to the end of my presentation. Well, for having a good rollout, it's important, or well, to have an efficient and effective certification process, it's a matter of good communication between the applicant, the NOBO, ERA, NSA. Well, if you see it, it's more of a circle, and then you can have a circle can roll. So you can roll in to the rollout of ERTMS, and so let's make that happen. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Titia. So please have a seat, and thank you for exploring together with us this topic. Benefits. Well, we heard a lot about problems, issues, etc., concerns, but we should not forget that beyond cost, etc., ERTMS, ETCS is offering, of course, benefits. So luckily we have Nicolas Furness from Network Rail here for EIM and Vincent Passot from Alstom speaking for Unifi here today. And they will tell us what kind of benefits you can all gain already today with ETCS. So I think that should help us also to balance a bit the view regarding concerns, problems, etc., and beyond, looking for those things where we see a positive contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Klaus. And we're delighted to be here today to share with you some of the great opportunities that exist for getting the best performance out of ETCS to take advantage of the ETCS game changers. And it's worth starting by taking a step back and thinking about how far we've already come in our ETCS journey. We take it for granted now that we've got a set of ETCS specifications in the public domain to use in our ETCS deployments, with more and more ETCS being put into service. And with these specifications publicly available, it's enabled a competitive landscape with a large supplier base able to deliver ETCS, not just within Europe, but worldwide. Alongside this, we've got a comprehensive governance system in place to manage updates and changes to the ETCS specifications, and a commitment to develop new features to enhance them. And it's the development of new features, the game changers, that we want to focus on today. Since 2016, the sector has been working on the game changers. These cover ATO, ETCS Level 3, alongside Hybrid Level 3 and Train Integrity, FRMCS, which we heard a lot about yesterday, and satellite positioning. So where have we got to? Well, today we want to focus on just two game changers to look at the benefits and first implementations of ATO and Hybrid Level 3. So let's start with automatic train operation, ATO, where the vision was to introduce a standardized, interoperable automatic train operation alongside ETCS, covering operation with and without drivers. Today, we're just going to focus on ATO, grade of automation 2, ATO with a driver. So the key question becomes, why does ATO add value to ETCS? Why would railways be interested in deploying ATO? Isn't ETCS enough complexity? But when you've got a capacity-constrained route on your rail network suffering from poor performance and you haven't got the money or space to build new lines, ATO provides some great opportunities. It can improve the performance on the line with better driving patterns, making train running smoother and more predictable. It can speed up recovery from perturbations and help bring services back to normal much faster than on a line operating without ATO. And these more predictable and accurate driving patterns also enable capacity on the line to be improved. But if my railway doesn't need more capacity, should I be considering ATO? Absolutely, as there's another key benefit offered by ATO, environmental sustainability, as it can provide energy-optimized driving patterns and operation. Our customers benefit from ATO too, as journeys will be smoother, more predictable, which in turn promotes the sustainability of rail. And this is no longer just a vision. We now have everything in place to make this a reality. The game-changing work on ATO Grade of Automation 2 is complete with the specifications published in the 2023 TSI. So the next step is implementation and lessons learned, of course, and Vincent will cover this shortly. But before we move on to talking about implementation, I want to set the scene for hybrid train detection. This was known as Hybrid Level 3 before the 2023 TSI was published. Hybrid train detection is a step on the journey towards having an ETCS system which doesn't need train detection. It'll also work with our existing traffic management systems. Removing train detection from our networks immediately will be quite a radical change, so a halfway house uses hybrid as a stepping stone. It introduces virtual blocks to split up train detection sections. This enables trains fitted with train integrity monitoring systems to run much closer together using smaller virtual block sections with larger train detection blocks used for trains not able yet to report their integrity. So it's a technical solution that enables all types of traffic to run and has some great benefits. The first benefit is pretty obvious. Less trackside train detection is required, so less equipment to be bought, commissioned and maintained, so lots of cost savings. This also means less equipment to fail, so an improvement in performance and reliability too. And with less equipment on track, that improves safety for trackside workers, as there's less need to go into the dangerous trackside environment. But of course, operation is maintained for mixed traffic as hybrid keeps some train detection, meaning trains without train integrity systems on board can still run. And of course, again, we get capacity improvements, allowing trains to move much closer together based on actual train capability and block section splitting, rather than having to increase the amount of train detection. And so on a mixed traffic railway, you can really start to improve the service, maybe running just passenger service using virtual block sections in the peak, and then reverting to mixed traffic operation using both block sections when capacity demand is lower. And I can confirm too, the TSI 2023 contains everything you need to implement hybrid. So with some great benefits on offer, let's see who's taken advantage of this already.
Thank you, Nicola. Good morning, everyone. As Claude said, we want to be a little bit positive. We want to show that the game changer, they were committed by the sector back in 2016. They have now been implemented, most of them in terms of specification in the TSI 2023. But there are already some customers, operators, infrastructure managers that did not wait until the TSI was published. They consider that the benefit, as briefly highlighted by Nicola, were actually a realistic one and would be worth to jump into the train even before effectively everything was published. So here we want to focus on a few references to illustrate that. If I'm starting on the left one, Fabio Senesi from RFI already yesterday explained the general ERTMS strategy in Italy, and he explained very correctly that on what is called the nodes, a big area in Italy where there is a congestion of train of different type of traffic, there is an important need to make sure that the capacity provided is as much as possible. So here what we illustrate is the node of Rome, by which we are actually implementing hybrid train detection on about 60 kilometers of the line. It's quite a complex station because until all the trains are being equipped, we need to maintain the legacy SCMT system. But on the part of the line which was already equipped with ETCS level 2, we are now making an upgrade to introduce virtual subsectioning in order to achieve higher capacity. There is also something which is specific, is of course at the moment you speak about hybrid train detection, you need to ensure the train integrity, and what we have done with Trenitalia is develop a kind of protocol to make sure that if we are coupling vehicles from different manufacturers, the OBU between the train can have some exchange in order to effectively confirm that all OBU are still connected together and realize a very clever type of train integrity. Moving to the right, in France, not far from here, Paris-Lyon was one of the first high-speed line open in Europe. The level of patronage has always increased over the years. There was a small hiccup during the pandemic crisis, but taking that into account, so the capacity is increasing, and SNCF Réseau decide to migrate that line toward ETCS level 2 to have a first level of improvement of the line. Nevertheless, they are planning to also see what the future will require, and we have a lot of trains which are equipped with the national legacy TVM system, so until all of those trains are equipped with ETCS, there is also a need to maintain the legacy system. This legacy system is a track circuit, coded track circuit basis, which means that if you want to create shorter track section or shorter block section with that type of technology, it could be very extensive. So once again, creating sub-blocks, virtual subsection due to hybrid train detection is effectively the right answer to further increase the capacity without actually generating additional cost on the infrastructure for the train detection. In the middle, this is an interesting project as well. It is not in Europe. This is in India, in the, what we call the new corridor in the Delhi area. This is what is called also the rapid rail transit system. There, the Indian authorities are planning to open 8 new corridors to address mainly the suburban project, and they decide that the best technology to develop that project is to adopt the ETCS specification. They adopt it, they took baseline 3 release 2, they said, we are in a suburban area, we need also to have high level of capacity, so they select also hybrid train detection and ATO grade of automation 2. When I say they adopted everything, it's not exactly the case. They also realized that going from GSMR would not be necessarily a good choice, the sense that by the time all the corridors are being deployed, the GSMR will no longer be supported. But at the same time, when the contract was signed, FRMCS specification, was not yet totally ready, or even not at the level of what we have today in the TSI 2023. So they decide to go for something else, and they selected LTE. What we did with them is to say, okay, LTE should be a good step toward FRMCS, so we can use IP-based communication between the OBU and the radio. We can reuse the same level of protocol or coupling that have been already found at that time in the first version of FRMCS. So we have effectively an equipment which is future ready. And to be complete, they also decide to implement platform screen doors, so there was some specific packet 44 function to exchange information between RBC and OBU. So that's a few examples as far as you see, even if I said hybrid train detection, you see that in the case of the Indian project, they are also largely integrating the other game changer. If we go back in Europe, and Nicolas, for the purpose, I will consider that UK is part of Europe. There are also a series of operators that decide that ATO grade of automation 2 is the future. Some are looking, like for India, to increase of capacity. If we take the case for the German project, so today in what is called the digital node of Stuttgart, the specification is effectively asking to deliver ATO grade of automation 2 on all the train and also provision for FRMCS, and it will become the standard requirement probably for most of the train of the German rollout. So this is really an element by which not only the operators are looking for an increase of performance with grade of automation 2, but also preparing the train for a future grade of automation 3 or 4 to overcome possible shortage of driver in a close future. Again, even if for Stuttgart it's not required because on the wayside the blocks are very short, the train are also provided with a train integrity feature in order to accommodate hybrid train detection or level 3 if and when needed. In UK, new train on the high-speed 2 line, they are high-speed train. They are also going to be fitted with ATO. Here we are not necessarily looking for performance, but more the operator, a very strong requirement in terms of maximum energy efficiency in the operation of the train. And so ATO is bringing a solution in that element. And last on the right, in Luxembourg, we are delivering new train, and in the frame of the project, so the customer decide to vary the contract by asking us to provide ATO in top of the train in order to potentially increase the capacity, but also to optimize the energy. So we have seen that with those examples, the game changers are a reality. The benefits are multiple. There is an element of regulation which is already largely in place in the latest TSI. When we say the benefits are multiples, there are benefits for the operators when we are speaking about capacity increase, better use of energy. There is also benefit for the infrastructure when we are speaking about increase of capacity, when we are speaking of delivery the capacity with less trackside equipment to install and to maintain. There is also benefit for the end user by having more frequent, more stable, and more green trains available. Standardization is key. We saw one of the success of ETCS was due to the standardization that opened the market, that create a set of specifications publicly available. There is an interoperability stamp which is granted. We have to continue that also with all the game changers. But we have seen in the example that with a little bit of flexibility, the future can be today. All of the projects I was mentioning are actually integrating game changer, but they are still using baseline 3 solution. So they took the opportunity to take the existing specification, the existing concept, and with a flexible approach to try to take the benefit as soon as possible. And some of them have already commitment that for small amendment due to the TSI, they will do some adjustment in order to ensure the long-term sustainability of the solution. So we are now all looking forward the next game changer to take the benefit of a radio evolution with FRMCS, taking the benefit of satellite positioning, and in the meantime, taking the full benefit of Valenciennes. Thank you very much.
Thank you both, Nicolas, Vincent. Giving some examples about game changer, please take a seat. Game changer applications, and this is not even an exhaustive list, there are even more examples. That should be understood as a positive message to the auditorium. There is not just cost, there are also benefits. Yeah, as we talked about also yesterday, a lot about ETCS system compatibility testing. So some call it the elephant in the room, but well, to give this more substance to discussion and proposals how to deal with that, we are happy to have here 3 colleagues. So one of them is Michel van Lieferinge, now speaking here on behalf of EOG. Yes, yeah, sadly, but true. No, that's a good thing. Oh, great to have him here. Plus Hartwig Schuster and Dirk Feigenspahn from Siemens for Unife, bringing in the industry perspective, how to improve ERC testing and giving some recommendations. Thank you all, and a warm welcome. Yeah, exactly.
So, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to me to be here once more, effectively representing the users group. And yeah. So, in fact, I was wondering myself, shall I present something about ESC after some comments that have been made about the process itself? I would like to remind you that we had workshops, 3 workshops, in fact, dealing with the subject, and we got some interesting elements, of course, from the workshops. So I will speak a little bit about it with my colleagues from Siemens. So the goal today is to give you a feedback of the return of experience of ESC that was introduced in 2019, if you remember well. So, in fact, we will share the presentation, and I will present the return of experience after a survey that has been made by the users group from their members, but also from UNICIG companies and from some railway undertakings. So it's a broad survey. And then my colleagues from Siemens will give you a return of experience seen from a supplier of rolling stock and a supplier of signaling equipments. It's a challenge to speak about the ESC in about 5 minutes, but okay, I will try to do it. So to introduce the subject, I will not spend too much time on reminding you what is ESC. So ESC is for ETCS system compatibility. We will not speak today about the radio system compatibility, but this is a parallel process. Just to introduce the subject, there is a definition. If you go back to the ERA website about ESC, you can read what is written on the website, and it explains also the reason why we have this checks at system level to check the compatibility between trackside and train-borne. I would like also to remind that it's available also on the website, that there was a report from the agency in 2021 where we had an action plan, so a lot of recommended actions. It's good to mention that not all actions have been executed, I would say 3-4 years after this report, and sometimes it's good to go back, as Joseph did yesterday, to the past. So just to come back quickly on why compatibility checks between trackside and train-borne. On this picture that will not explain completely, you have on the left the process for the train-borne development, and on the right the trackside one. And what you can see that in the process to go from specifications to products and system, there you have interpretation and you have variability still in both for the trackside development and the train-borne. We have to realize that for the train-borne, there are a lot of requirements for the specification. For the trackside, as you know, we have to see that more as a toolbox, and where there are a lot of possibilities to engineer the trackside. This is why at the end of both process of development, it's still necessary to check the compatibility between the two subsystems, and not to mention that in between you have, of course, the radio system when we at least starting from level 2. And the wording is important because also coming from the workshop, I understood that there is a misunderstanding about ESC. When we speak about ETCS system compatibility, it's about checks, and checks does not mean necessarily test. A check can be also a paper check, even with no test at all. And this is something I would like to insist upon. So, I would like now to move to the feedback of the return of experience from the EUG survey that was made, and to highlight first the positive element from this survey. In fact, the good point is that since it has been published, so the process is up and running, so we collected the fact that at least more than 100 ESC campaigns have been performed, so this is a positive point, and the checks from the IMs have been made available to the agency from most of the member states. For me, it's also the opportunity to remind you that ESC is not a new process. Before ESC, we had the same kind of process in each and every member state, but their own way. And this process was not necessarily transparent. No, the positive point is that all the checks are transparent. And this can be used by labs, by the suppliers, to in fact verify in advance their products and system. A very important point is that very few errors have been detected by applying the process, and it's especially true for baseline tree products. So it shows that the baseline tree release 2 is now a mature system, and that the maturity of the products themselves have been improved and is now considered at a very good level. And of course, the quality of this process is that there is an anticipation of issues that could appear during operation, so you reduce the problems you have later in operation. But of course, there are reported issues and ways to improve this process. Especially, it was reported by all of the actors that the administrative burden is leading to high cost. You can say, okay, few errors detected, but high cost for this. Why to keep this process? ESC today is linked to authorization. Again, the stakeholders, they consider that this should be decorrelated from the authorization. We see also that there is poor availability of labs, or it takes sometimes a lot of time to access the labs, which is also an issue. Also, remote testing is not used necessarily. Very poor development of this. Also important to mention is that you have the possibility to perform ESC at IC level, so at the level of the product, or at subsystem level. And it seems that most of the ESC are done at subsystem level and not at product level. This again is an element of cost. Okay? The change management is also very complex, and what we see still is that in practice, ESC is very different from one country to another one, even if we try to standardize the process. And this can be very simple. We have best-in-class example. I will not quote them. And we have also the worst one, where it can be very complex to perform ESC. So, conclusion from the EUG survey is that the necessary conditions to phase out ESC are not yet there. Why? Because there is still not enough standardization everywhere. So no standardization of engineering rules and operational practice. This is for the track side. We don't have necessarily standard products. Effectively, we have still variability over there. This process is not harmoniously implemented over Europe. And the fear also is that with the new baseline, for example, baseline 4, when the products will come, that we could face new compatibility problems, and that a testing at system level is still necessary to detect problems before operation. So the conclusion is that ESC shall remain, but be largely simplified, and as a target view, that the track-to-train integration should be tested only once at IC level, so at product level, and for each major version. Because I think it has been mentioned also that there is not enough reuse, because cross-acceptance of ESC campaigns is possible. It's allowed by the process, but it seems also it's not really used. So there is a lot of room for improvement. And we believe that as soon as possible, a group of experts having designed the ESC process should rework, in fact, this process to simplify it to the minimum. Thank you for your attention, and I give the floor to my colleagues.
Thank you. Is there a different presentation? Or?
No, it should be the same one. You need to press the green button here.
Yeah, good morning, Dirk Feigenspan. I will share some experiences of ESC from the perspective of a rolling stock manufacturer. These experiences might vary depending on the area of use of the vehicle. As for a regional train dedicated to one line, it is a total different approach to ESC. As for us, with a standardized locomotive platform for interoperable traffic in more than 20 countries. And one of the most important criteria for our customers is that the locomotive should be operable on almost the complete network. So our first approach was to check, cluster, and harmonize all the ESC procedures over the different countries. Based on the ESC RSC technical document of the ERA homepage, we got the impression that the allocation of a line to an ESC type is handled very inhomogeneous, sometimes according to a baseline or to a level or to a region or to a supplier or even line-specific or border-specific. So for us, that means that we have to handle in the moment more than 70 different ESC types only for the Vectron locomotive. So I would say ESC is not yet an European standard. So what did we experience with the locomotives already in operation? With the publishing of an ESC type to an existing line, the simple question is if the vehicle can continue to operate. Are the former past ETCS tests like train integration still valid? Or can the vehicle continue to operate with Class B system? Where ESC statements got mandatory, we needed in the beginning up to 24 months from organizing the test campaign up to the registration in ERA TV. Nowadays, it's about 6 months. In some cases, there were also defined deadlines from which on vehicles with ETCS OBU should have an ESC statement. The crucial point with these deadlines is that they should well reflect if all the resources like test manager, infrastructure manager, ETCS suppliers, NOBO, and test equipment are available for all the different vehicle types in operation and also for the different hardware and software configurations of these vehicle types. Otherwise, modern vehicles with ETCS OBU would have a major disadvantage. And for a bigger fleet in operation, it's quite normal that there exist different hardware and software configurations. But it's not always possible and feasible to perform all the ESC procedures with the different configurations. So that might end in upgrade programs for the vehicles, which are again time and cost intensive. On the other hand, where identical ETCS track equipment is used, the generic ESC procedure works well. And newly identical equipped lines can be used without any additional efforts. Nevertheless, for today, I would say that ESC puts additional efforts on the vehicles to keep them running. One last point concerning a new type authorization of an existing vehicle type. The efforts for the ESCs might vary very much depending on the question if the tests have to be performed only in lab, on a dedicated test track, or line-specific, border-specific, or even a combination of it. For our newest vehicle release, more than 50% of all the test days were only dedicated to ESC. That's a major topic, as for Class B system, it's normally a simple procedure. And once done successfully, it is granted as a net-wide access. What is not the case with ESC very often. And moreover, one other point, for country borders, they are defined 3 different ESC types for the relevant border stations. If you check in ERA TV, there is just 1 passenger train with the respective ESCs. That means that an interoperable freight traffic with locomotives equipped with ETCS baseline 3 is not possible between these countries anymore. On the other hand, the advantage is that with issuing a new type authorization, you have a clear visibility, and you can go for adding additional new ESC types in ERA TV. But all in all, I have to say that we have significant efforts in parallel for Class B system and ESC procedure today. So, thank you.
Okay, good morning, Hartwig Schuster. I will go now deeper as a representative of ETCS onboard supplier. So first, an overview about the different test methods we have done in the past or today. So most obvious on the left-hand side is field testing, which has the highest effort from the organizational point of view. It is sometimes way faster than lab testing. One of the biggest challenge, not only for ESCs, so field testing in general, is to get a test authorization granted, which is still purely a national thing. So in one country it's super easy, in others it can be quite complex and a lengthy process. In the middle, next one is lab testing in an RBC supplier lab. So the complexity for this is very high and should not be underestimated. So for example, if you're going to test remotely, you need agreements with a competitor on IP addresses, you need tunneling for security reasons, and it is very unfortunately connected with high costs. I think even the highest costs of all three examples. Also very unfortunate is that normally the ETCS supplier is apart from the upfront integration activities, not part of the test team. So everything which is tested here is not transparent to the ETCS onboard supplier. Last one on the right-hand side is lab testing in a lab of an IM, which has, of course, the same complexity as the integration activities in the supplier lab. But the costs differ heavily. So we have free of charge to very high, but the costs are usually very transparent. Also, testing is transparent because we exactly know what and how will be tested as we are part of the test team. So the reports from our test teams are, we prefer testing in an IM lab. Now, some of the findings or some statements on the findings. So with our onboard, we perform checks in many countries with hundreds of test cases, and the findings are super small in number, as Michelle already mentioned. And it does not at all justify the effort, we really have to say. So most of the findings, interestingly, are related to trackside, but of course also to the ETCS onboard. For our product, I can say they are very limited, so we have less than 1% of the checks failing, and this is due to a different interpretation of the specification and, unexpected trackside engineering because of missing harmonized engineering rules. All of the errors could easily be solved on the product level by software updates, and very important, none of the findings have been vehicle type specific. Finally, some suggestions from our point of view. So some of them were already mentioned by Michelle. So the findings are so limited. We propose that we should dare to also accept ESC checks based on analysis rather than testing. ESC checks must be assigned per default to the product. So to the IC level, testing on subsystem level should be an exception. And the reason why we such a low number of errors is the good maturity of the baseline 3 specification. Therefore, we suggest to maintain system version 2.0 for a reasonable time and focus more on improvement and quality of the ETCS specification rather than new features. Trackside engineering rules were already been mentioned. So, and for my final statement is, let us trust the competence of the directly involved players. So ESC checks are normally performed either between onboard supplier and the IM or among ETCS onboard supplier and a competitor as trackside supplier and the IM. And this is enough impartiality. So we do not need independent assessment for ESC. And we also do not understand why it is common practice that one ESC statement per network has to be added to the authorization file. So cutting the last 2 items will cost nothing, so let's take it up. Thank you.
Thank you all. Well, as let's say, not a serious comment, but it seems that ESC testing is a complicated, time-consuming thing, but also presentations about ESC can last a bit longer than initially planned. But anyway, I will shorten the conclusion a bit. So you will have time for questions and you will receive some answers. So my preference will, of course, be that here from the auditorium, you have the possibility to ask and get some answers. So please be invited to answer or to ask questions. Is there anybody? There's somebody waving his hand, but for different reasons. There's a question. Paulo, could you briefly introduce us? Oh,
yes,
sorry.
Götz Walter, VDV
Sorry.
Germany is a German sector organization of railways. It's more a comment than a question, but also a question. There were many proposals how to improve the ESC procedure. So my question is, what steps will be done to improve this? And I explain why I have this question, because today with Class B systems, when you have the authorization, you can drive in the whole country and fulfill the needs of your customers from one day to the next day. With the ESC, it seems quite different to come again to such a situation, and this is quite, well, not what is expected when the railway is modernized. Thank you.
So, please.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you for the question. First of all, about the next steps, maybe. I think we did not mention that, in fact, I was quick on the slides, but on the first slide, it was mentioned that, in fact, ESC was introduced as a temporary measure in the TSI, on the request of some stakeholders of the sector. Now, the agency has to produce a report for the Commission to be delivered on the 1st of June. It's a tight schedule. Of course, there was a lot of material also collected from the workshop 2 days ago, and also material from the survey. ERA made also a survey about the subject. And so ERA will make recommendation to the Commission, and then the Commission has to do something with it. So we will see what comes out of that. But as you have seen, we recommend to set up the group of experts that made, let's say, this designed the process, which, by the way, it's not new, as I said. It's a kind of a standardization of the process that was already in place in Switzerland since a long time. So this is what will be done. But I think we can be fast, because we know what to do to improve the process if all stakeholders agree upon the proposals to improve. So now about the current process, the recommendation I would give to everybody is to read carefully what is today in the TSI and in the application guide, because personally I think there are a lot of misunderstanding about the process itself. It seems like what is written is not clear enough, but I have the feeling that it's clear enough. And what has been said also, checks, it's not necessarily testing. The process was there also to avoid to redo and redo and redo all the time the same thing. So there is room for cross-acceptance, for checking a paper. So if an equipment has been already passing a lot of tests, you don't have to redo the testing. That's so. I think a lot is already there to improve the process, in fact.
Thank you, Michel. Any other question here from the auditorium? Ah, Michel.
Sorry, Klaus, maybe it's not a question, but it's at least 2 statements which I would like to make. First of all, I have been working very well with Michel in the past, and I think the fact that Michel is now working for the users group is very, very good signal about how well we as suppliers and railways on a technical level can work together. So I think we we can appreciate the idea that we can actually flexibly go from one side to the other side.
Well, by the way,
because
I did
we
not
always have the
complain
same
about the
interest
fact.
into account. More importantly, I would like to make a statement on what Gabrielle said in the slide. 20 years of stability of the specifications. I would say, if you look at the baseline 3 specifications, they were actually introduced in 2012. That was the first version. And the first products of baseline 3 can still run for a very long time. We are only now in 2023 that we have a really substantial change of the specifications. All the other intermediate changes of the specifications have always been in a compatible way. It's not necessary to change your onboard units for that. So I would argue that the specifications are already very, very stable. We at least cover already a period of 20 years. So just more, maybe 10 years more to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Michel. Any other question? Here, there's, okay.
Michel has mentioned a very interesting point, which I totally agree with, is the fact that ESC is a temporary measure. Considering this, I wonder why there has been the incentive to encourage investments in the laboratories. Do you really think the business case is really positive in this case? And on the other hand, I would say we would like to have more intensively investments on ETCS and have rollouts in different countries. Maybe people could consider it as complicated, but at the end, we mainly have, we might have many hundreds of trains in one country, but at the end, it's about train types. And if we would consider authorization in an efficient way by doing the IC level ESC, and if we would make the ESC testing more efficient, I would say it's not really that complicated to complete tests with the field. And it would not take that much time. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Jorge, do you see a business case in ESC testing?
Hi. Well, I think the business case is to deploy TCS as fast as we can. And for that reason, if we test in the lab, we can deploy it faster. And the business case is not only the business case of the lab, but the business case of the whole system. And for sure, you will gain a lot of time testing in the lab, the ESC.
Thank you. Michel?
I would like just a quick add-on on this, is that for some IMs, they have invested in a lab also. Why? Because when you have a national scheme, for example, and you order immediately your national scheme, then you can at the same time build your lab, and you will use this lab for quite a long time to test various maybe variations of your infrastructure, etc. So in that case, there is a real advantage. I'm speaking, for example, for the railways in the northern of Europe. Of course, for the railways that have started a long time ago, it's sometimes a bit more difficult because the deployment of ERTMS was not initially a national deployment. So it's really depending from one IM to another one, or one member state to another one. But when you think at the beginning your case including the lab, I think there is a positive business case at the end. That's
Thank you, Michel, again. Well, time-wise, we already have entered the coffee break. So I would like to just briefly conclude on this session 5. Of course, the advantage was, or the expectation was hopefully not that this is a complete session answering all the questions, but at least some of them. And I think the insights we heard today and recommendations were helpful. Hopefully enjoyed this as well. And this is why I would like to ask you for a warm applause for our speakers before you enter the coffee break.